Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles show presented by Butcher Box. Butcher Box is offering our listeners an amazing offer where new users can get free meat plus $20 off your first box. Join today by using our link, butcherbox.com/PHLY, and use code PHLY to receive this exclusive offer today before time runs out. Welcome to the show, a little prime time edition. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman from our friendly confines in our home. Zach, how you doing?
Doing great. This seems like old times, Bo. The 8 p.m. Tuesday was a regular time slot for us. Yeah. So, look, I love the daily shows and doing it in person with you, but this is a little throwback. And the old time listeners will know if I turn to my right, it's because that's where the television is. And so I have the Sixers game on here. I think we're timing it well, but we'll probably get a halftime bump here. And of course, people can watch the archive version as well.
There you go. And, make sure you're checking out the PHLY Sixers post-game pod today as the Sixers look like maybe they're going to just do 1-2-3 Cancun in the second half potentially, but we'll see what happens. We've got plenty to talk about on this show, Zach. We heard from A.J. Brown today. We have news before the show that an Eagles favorite is headed elsewhere, and we're going to go through our shadow drafts, what we would have done with the selections that the Eagles picked. But what's going on in your neck of the woods? How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm doing well, but I thought actually you would have more of a top of the show planned here because there were 4 news items since our last show, or 4 transactions since our last show that are worth mentioning here for a few reasons. First off, the Eagles waived 4 players yesterday, players they had signed the futures contracts: Noah Ellis, Griffin Hebert, Taiwan Mullen, and Lacita Smith. So this might have implications in that game that we played where I forget what that game was.
You might have had Lacita Smith somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this is also relevant because the Eagles are opening up spots for their smallest undrafted free agent class during the Howie Roseman era.
We're going to talk about those guys specifically on tomorrow's show.
Yep. With the Mekhi Becton signing and these 4 moves, the Eagles have 7 open roster spots. And you can do the math. They have 74 players under contract. They have 9 unsigned draft picks. That leaves them with 7 spots for undrafted free agents. 7 was the number Howie Roseman gave the other night. But the reason why I teased it with you is because the Eagles went from 2 LI to, is it LS's or LI?
Whatever you want.
Okay. And then we mourned the dismissal of one Ellis.
Yes.
They had the chance to draft another Ellis. It did not occur. And now Noah is sent packing as well.
Well, and I'll tell you why this is not being made a bigger deal of for a couple of reasons. For one, bit-wise, you can't kill what's already dead.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Like
that horse is
not and from the Ellis perspective, like the decision to waive Christian Ellis was the end of the road. It was done. You can't break what's already broken. The trust has been already cast aside, and maybe the Jonah Ellis thing would have saved it. Maybe, we don't know. I think the team is still perennially and perpetually and forever moving on broken. But the other thing here is, away from the bit, Christian Ellis cutting him was a bad decision. They made a bad roster move. Jonah Ellis drafting him, I think, would have been a good decision. Noah Ellis, love Noah Ellis. I hope he continues a long career and hangs on rosters, but I would not, in good conscience, be enlightening our listeners if I was making a real case that they needed to keep Noah Ellis around. They have defensive tackle depth. The reason that the Christian Ellis bit works and the Jonah Ellis bit works is because there is truth behind it. I'm not going to tell you that they have ruined anybody's lives by waiving Noah Ellis.
I respect the integrity that is required for that.
The bit only works if it comes from a place of integrity. Thank you.
Understood. So I think the notable part of those moves yesterday was opening the spots for the undrafted free agents, which we will discuss tomorrow and which we'll practice with the team on Friday when the rookie minicamp begins. You teased news before the show. Boston Scott, who has had a long run with the Eagles, right? He is going to Los Angeles. He's signing with the Los Angeles Rams. I have not read it yet, but I saw he had a long message that he posted on his Twitter account.
Wow, you're giving him a TLDR?
No. I was prepping for the show. I mean, it came out like right before the show. I didn't have.
Yeah, but you saw it and you chose. You said, "That's too many words, my man. I got to move on."
I did not say that. Trust me, no one is intimidated by word count, but less than me. I mean, I will read length whenever it comes. So I will. But yeah, Boston Scott elsewhere, a move we expected. Pay attention to Will Shipley. I know Will Shipley has his detractors among the fans, among the podcast hosts, but I think that Will Shipley and Kenny Gainwell are going to be in competition for the number 2 running back this season.
I do think we could take a second just because, you said it, but like for a guy who was signed off the Saints practice squad, late in the season, what a career Boston Scott has carved out. Now, some people saw it right away and we're all over that when it happened, but 6 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles, over 12,000 rushing yards with an extra 566 receiving yards, like an important player. We know about the Giants killer, and I like the jokes that the Rams don't even play the Giants this year. What are they thinking? But a really fun player, like a really fun aesthetic player to watch.
Yep.
A key contributor to some important teams, and like a really fun guy in the locker room. Pour one out for Boston Scott, one of the good ones.
Well said. Likable player, productive player,
and overachiever.
And the perspective that I will give on Boston Scott is this. He came to the Eagles before Miles Sanders was in Philly. He outlasted Miles Sanders. If you're a practice squad signing running back who's a backup, and they draft a 2nd-round pick to be the starter, and you outlast that guy, right? And that has nothing to do with Miles Sanders' career. Miles Sanders was a productive starter. He got paid big money. That goes to show you the longevity, the multiple contracts that Boston Scott signed. And yeah, I don't think anyone in Philadelphia, any Eagles fan, will look back unfavorably at the Boston Scott era. It'll be, that was a fun player.
Yeah, I mean, kind of funny to call it the Boston Scott era, but yeah.
I just mean Boston Scott's
tenure.
time with the team. Yeah,
I agree.
Like, if you think about your deep backup running backs, like he's got a bigger spot in the hearts of Eagles fans than Reno Mahe, than Corral Buckhalter. Corey Clement caught. He had 100.
I think you'd probably give it to Corey Clement given the actual game, but yeah.
But Boston Scott could come back to Wicked Wulf in 15 years, and
good plug there, nicely done.
Yeah, and people will raise their glasses of Miller Lite for Boston Scott.
And then they'll get that's so toasted. They're going to say, I need a mortgage. Let me call it Mortgage CS.
Yes. And then they will pull up their phone and place a bet on Bet Parks, and they will chase it with some Olipop, right?
And then they're going to walk around the next day and be like, I think I got some sniffles. I need to check out Rite Aid for my allergies.
Yes. And of course, after a long night out the night before, they'll want to stay home that night and put something on the grill. And that's where Butcher Box comes in. So
nicely done. Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about AJ Brown, because I do think it's fair to say that because of the timing, we probably didn't spend enough time on and fully unpacking the decision from the Eagles and from AJ Brown to extend him beyond what was already on his contract. We talked about it a little bit over the course of draft weekend, especially on Thursday night. But today he signs that contract and talks to us reporters for the first time. First, before we get to the actual contract, what were your takeaways from talking to AJ today?
Yeah, the big message that he had when the team released the video of him signing, like he officially put pen to paper, was he said he's going to hang up his cleats in these uniforms, right? And when he signed this contract, I wasn't thinking this is the last contract he'll ever sign. So I found that to be an interesting comment. But his message today was how much he enjoys playing in Philadelphia, which I think is relevant given that there's like I don't want to say it's a very vocal minority that's been talking about like AJ Brown playing elsewhere, right? But AJ Brown said that his career took off here. He loves being here. He said his daughter is going to school here again. He had his kids here. He made an interesting comment too, where he said that there's other guys on the team who have young kids, and he wants his kids to grow up together with them.
Yeah, who do you think he was talking about? Devontae, we know.
Devontae, sure. I mean, Britton Covey. I don't know. Britton Covey's going to be here for a long time. That receiver room had a bunch of kids not a bunch, but a few of them had young kids.
They're significant others, at least.
Sure. Yes. So, yeah. So I that jumped out to me. I like, Chris Franklin from NJ.com asked him about his goals for this year. And he says he has a note, he keeps notes in his phone of different things he wants to improve.
When I wrote that down too, I thought that was one of the more, I thought that was like, file that away. That could be a thing to follow up on down the line.
Exactly. And then he said, when other people are out on Friday night partying and Saturday night drinking, he said he's getting another workout in. Right. So he emphasized that he's still hungry. I don't like to, make a big deal about someone's salary, but in football, everything's public, right? And in football, things are, salary sometimes leads to status. And he's the highest paid receiver in the NFL. Now, can't imagine for long Justin Jefferson's going to sign a deal, and Jamar Chase. But he said that once you get between the lines, no one cares what your bank account is, right? So, and then a few other things. He said that as far as like him calling up WIP this offseason and some of the chatter around him, he says he's human. He has to do a better job of tuning things out, right? He spoke about his relationship with Jalen Hurts and
who was there?
Smith. Yeah, Jalen Hurts was there. That's true. So what were your impressions? You were in there.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you make of, like, there was a descending? We've had a few press conferences this offseason, right? There was the full pomp and circumstance of the Jason Kelce retirement.
Mm-hmm.
There was the delayed but still celebratory retirement of Fletcher Cox. Brought his whole family up from Yazoo City. There was the Devontae Smith extension, which there was some family in attendance. AJ Brown was just there. Just him alone. He wasn't dressed up or anything like that. Dom and Jalen Hurts were in the background. He was just there. No family, no anything. And contrasted to when he first got traded to the Eagles, the whole family was there. He's in a suit. It's a whole thing. Yeah. So what do you make of the the descending level of pageantry to this one?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, and to give the viewers and the listeners some color here, at one point he just showed up, right? They typically arrive with a PR representative, and the PR representative preps them for the questions from the big bad Philly media, right? And so, but no, at one point AJ Brown just like walked into the auditorium. He's like, "I'm ready," and we're like, "All right, we're ready too." And then he's like, "Where's?" And so then he went and found PR. But yeah, I actually found that endearing in a certain respect. That this is not a big, typically you pay a guy $30+ million a year, and it's the headlining.
And as you asked him about, you make him the number one highest paid wide receiver in football.
Yeah, I mean it's like a banner day for the organization, and this was like fit in between lift and lunch, right?
Right.
So, I think that's cool. I think that's endearing. I didn't make much of it. What did you make of that?
I think it's part of the I don't know how conscious it is and how much of it is actually exactly how it is, but the thing that he was talking about working out on Friday and Saturday nights, doing these 2-a-days when everybody else is doing other stuff, and like just being about business and like just back to work. I think it's sort of presenting that same thing. Like, this happened, I'll talk about it, but to just totally ape the Jalen Hurtsism. He's trying to keep the main thing, right? Sure. Like let's Just let me do my job of trying to get better every day.
Yeah, and look, that's been consistent during these past 2 years. I'm not going to deny that AJ Brown could be emotional at times, right? There's times when there's a lot of attention on him, and rightfully so. He's one of the star players. But since he's been here, he's been like a really hard worker. He's been a really good teammate, right? He cares about his team. Like, I've heard stories of different teammates of guys talking about like how involved he is and gets to know them. So he's not someone who's like off to the side. And I do think he appreciates being here, right? Like AJ, if in a certain respect, AJ Brown could be elsewhere if he wanted to be elsewhere, right? Like he chose to sign this contract here. She chose to sign 2 contracts here. Now the Eagles certainly made it enticing both times, but AJ Brown is one of he's one of the few NFL players who's like an NBA player, where you talk about like the player movement era. Like sure. AJ Brown can dictate where he's going to play, and AJ Brown wants to be here in Philadelphia, and I think that's particularly noteworthy. And it's not just the city and the fan base. I think he's very comfortable with the team, with his teammates, things of that nature.
And so, to follow up on that, why do you think that this came together when it did?
I don't have a good answer to that. I mean, he said the Eagles came to them with it. Mm-hmm. My guess is this: like, I mean, besides anything else, the Eagles know that the price isn't going down. The price isn't staying steady. I think the Eagles probably wanted to. They knew something had to be done with AJ's contract at some point. We've talked about the contract that he was on before the 2026 season was untenable from just like a cap number perspective. So the Eagles were going to have to do something, either give him a new deal or trade him. But he was not going to play that year on that deal, given the way the Eagles handle their cap. So I think once they decided that they want to re-sign him, it behooves them to do it yesterday as opposed to tomorrow. Because, like I said, Jamar Chase's contract's coming up, Justin Jefferson's contract's coming up, and I don't think AJ Brown's the type you're going to slot below those guys, right? So I would imagine that was the impetus of it, but unless there was something more to it, I would imagine this was them wanting to keep one of their foundational pieces and not wanting to have to chase the wide receiver market.
Well said. All right, Zach, let's talk for a second. A bit of a whirlwind day at the Novacare complex, and it's about 4:30. I'm leaving the complex. I'm on solo parenting duty tonight, and I got to make sure I get Jane before 5:30, and I got to get Casey after that before 6. And I'm leaving at 4:30, and I got to make dinner, and we haven't, the draft was last week, and I haven't had time to stock the fridge, so I got to swing by the grocery store, get some essentials, then get home, quick fire dinner, then get Jane, then get Casey, get them back, get dinner eaten. Tough sometimes. Get them bathed, get them in bed, do an 8 o'clock podcast. Tough. And you know what would have made that a lot easier?
What's that?
Well, my butcher box is coming next week.
Terrific.
And if I had my butcher box this week, it would have been a whole lot simpler. I wouldn't have had to swing to the grocery store. I would have had a meal prepped already, because butcher box is bringing you peace of mind and high quality ingredients. 100% grass-fed beef, free-range organic chicken, pork raised crate-free, and wild-caught seafood humanely raised. No antibiotics or added hormones. Incredible value. A variety of high-quality cuts at an amazing value with exclusive member deals, plus recipe inspiration, guides, tips, and hacks. What's the bottom line here? What do you need to know? Here it is. ButcherBox is offering our listeners an amazing offer where new users get free meat plus $20 off your first box. Join today using our link at butcherbox.com/PHLY and use the code PHLY to receive this exclusive offer today, before time runs out.
I was giving my son his allergy medication this morning, and the box, it's from Rite Aid. I'm not just reading a script here. I'm a customer as well. It's because it's allergy season right now, and pollen from trees, grasses, and weeds are primary cause of seasonal allergy. Symptoms flare when the pollen you are allergic to is in the air. It's possible to be allergic to just one or several types. If you're feeling sneezy, runny, and itchy, it might be pollen allergies, which can make you feel pretty miserable. But there are ways to get relief. Sign up for Rite Aid Rewards for the Rite Aid Rewards emails at riteaid.com/rewards to receive email pollen alerts from your area. If pollen count is high, try to stay indoors, keep windows closed, and run air conditioners as needed. There's a number of things you can do, but you can also go to your local Rite Aid where they have over-the-counter options like a nasal rinse to help flush out your nasal passages when symptoms are flaring up or when you know the pollen count is high. They have different types of medications that you can use, and then you can also go to your Rite Aid pharmacist, and they have different types of allergy medications like a decongestion, which might be necessary. You can always ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for recommendations on ways to get relief during allergy season. Visit your local Rite Aid today, stock up on allergy relief, or catch up on immunizations for RSV, shingles, and more. Walk in or schedule a vaccine appointment at riteaid.com.
All right, Zach, ready to talk a little shadow draft?
Yeah, looking forward to it. And also welcome to all the fans who might have been coming in during halftime here.
Yeah, all of them hopefully did not take your advice of betting on the Sixers in this game.
Still believe.
Well,
yeah, shadow draft.
All right, let's do it. This is an exercise I've been doing for the past several years, and a little bit different this year because we were hosting the show. So first few rounds, I was able to make my decisions live. A few of the other ones, I mean, I had my board set up. I had to sort of go back on round 5 and round 6 and decide who I would have taken, but that's okay. The idea here is put a board together, and when the Eagles are on the clock, so am I. I got to go on the record with who I would have picked when they pick. I'm not allowed to say like I would have traded down or I would have traded up. I have to pick when they pick, and I think it's just a good exercise in. By no means is this like, oh, I could do as good a job as an NFL team. It's in my opinion, a nice elucidation of like just how luck driven the draft is if you follow it over the years, because sometimes I might do better than the Eagles. That's not because I know more than they do. It's because, maybe I'm following the consensus board and that's just how it works out sometimes. But it is so unpredictable that even when they have all the information and the experts, there is no magic bullet here. There is a wide variance to how this stuff goes, and so it's an interesting thing to follow. And I think if you're gonna grade a draft, then you should sort of go through this process. And I actually disagree. I don't know how you feel, Zach, about like the hand wringing over, well, you can't grade a draft until the players have played for 4 years. Like you're grading the process. You're not
exactly
grading the outcomes. That's a different thing.
Yeah, I am with you there, right? I mean, obviously, like anything else, it's easy to say things after the fact, but you are grading the process. You're grading the moves they could have made. You're grading how they navigated it. So I have no issue with grades right now. And you take and by the way, like things are supposed to be fun in sports sometimes too, right? Like let's not draft
like
grades.
that.
It's fun. Exactly. Yeah. That's a fun thing. It's not hurting anyone. No one's like offended if our team gets a C.
Right.
It's so come on. Like that's one where we in the football sphere might take ourselves a little too seriously.
Now, Zach, are you going to go through this as well? Have you? Did you retroactively do this, or
I didn't do it on the clock? So it's kind of. But I can tell you who I would have liked at that spot. But I will defer. This is more of a Bo exercise than a Zach exercise.
Okay. Now, I think we talked about this over the course of the weekend. The first pick is pretty simple at 22. In my board, the way that I had set things up, Terrion Arnold was a tier above Quinyon Mitchell. I had Terrion Arnold as the top corner in the draft. And so when you get to 22, everybody else from that top tier is gone. Terrion Arnold is sticking out like a sore thumb. To me, that was an easy pick. And the reason that I like him over Quinyon Mitchell is he's a little bit younger. You have the Alabama pedigree. Having watched him, like I really liked watching him, and I don't want to overvalue my own eyes. You're also, looking at the consensus board and reading what Dan Brugler writes and other experts. This is not a shot against Quinyon Mitchell. If Terrion Arnold had been off the board, my pick probably would have been Quinyon Mitchell. It's a like he would have been the next guy up. But for me, Terrion Arnold over Quinyon Mitchell. I do worry a little bit about the timed 4.51 speed. That's why he's not like I would have graded him like a notch even below Christian Gonzalez from last year. But for me in this class, he was the top corner, and I would have gone Terrion Arnold.
Yes, I am. I'm consistent with you there. No, I didn't have I didn't have Arnold a tier higher. I had them stacked together. If I had to choose between the two, it would have been Arnold based on the age profile and the level of competition profile, right? But like I said on draft night, the time speed was a question of mine. But overall, I would probably feel a little safer with the bet with Terrion Arnold. And I also just want to point out because and you might roll your eyes. I read everything. Actually, our like highest viewed short YouTube short has become our little Quinyon Mitchell thing before the draft, that where I was saying that it would be out of the Eagles' type to trade for him, and the comments on it are like this idiot, like this guy doesn't know anything, so on and so forth. I was
literally did not know that existed.
Oh yeah, I was specifically speaking about the Eagles trading up for him. Yeah. I didn't say, when I said he's not the type, I wasn't saying he's not the type the Eagles would draft. And I was saying because at the time we were thinking trading up to 14, and I thought if they traded up, it would be for an offensive lineman. That was the point I was making. I said when they were looking to trade up in the past for a Sauce Gardner or for J.C. Horn or for Derek Stingley.
By the way,
yeah.
You're also not saying they're not going to do it. You're saying it wouldn't be their type. It's not their type. This is an atypical pick for them.
And they didn't trade up, by the way, too. Like that was the other thing,
so
too.
You didn't say anything wrong.
If you told me Mitchell would have been there at 22, I would have said, yeah, that's a fine pick. But I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay. So then you move on to 40. And this is another interesting one, because we talked about how good of a job we thought Howie Roseman did at working the board, and how staying at 22 allowed him to move up to 40 to take a player who they had with a first round grade in Cooper DeJean. And yeah, sure. Like anytime you draft a guy, you're the highest person on him. The league let him get to 40. But I think that there are real circumstantial things at play here, and he probably would have gone over the next few picks. At that spot, I had two guys left with first round grades. It was Kool-Aid McKinstry and Cooper DeJean. On the clock, I took Kool-Aid McKinstry, and it's not as neat of a double secondary fit, because I think Terrion Arnold can play inside, but there's not quite as much versatility. And I would actually say that having sat on this one and done a little bit more work on Cooper DeJean, I probably would rather have Cooper DeJean than Kool-Aid McKinstry at this point. But on the clock at the time, I took Kool-Aid McKinstry, so I redid the Alabama corners with Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry.
And that certainly wouldn't have been a bad outcome. I was on the record going into the day that I would have done Cooper DeJean. I'm consistent with the Eagles there.
And then if you also just sort of think about like position wise, if you had wanted to force an edge or wanted to force a tackle, it wouldn't have been a good spot to do so. And it's part of the reason why the Eagles did what they did. Like, as we talked about, the next tackles who went on the board did not go for another 15, 20 picks. Patrick Paul, Roger Rosengarten, Kingsley Suamataia. The edges, my guy Jonah Ellis was still there, but that would have been a bit of a reach at that spot. They did a good job maneuvering themselves into position to take what was clearly the best player on the board of someone who was attractive to them.
Yes, agree with you there. And it was a good process and good player, good outcome.
Okay. You move to 94, the trade back in the third round. And this was a little bit more interesting, where the players who I still had available with second round grades, I only had two. One was Jaden Hicks, the safety, who didn't end up going to the fourth round. And as much as I want to trust the board, I didn't feel like I could go three secondary in a row.
Sure.
And then the other was Jatavian Sanders, and I didn't want to go Jatavian Sanders. Oh, no, I did, and that's what I did.
Oh, okay.
That's what I did, because my commitment to myself is to not drop around below. I mean, again, this is like a very Bobo version of what's actually going on, but I'm not going to drop around below to reach for a different position. And so it was between Ja'Tavion Sanders and Jaden Hicks. And because I didn't want to take a third secondary player, I went with Ja'Tavion Sanders. And as I say that, I'm actually lying because there are three. It was also Troy Franklin. I missed him here. And so it was actually, for me, between Ja'Tavion Sanders and Troy Franklin. I ended up going Ja'Tavion Sanders and thinking about it after the fact. I kind of wish I did Troy Franklin. My decision was that I thought that there was a little bit more depth at wide receiver and that there were not really any other tight ends that I liked. So that's why I took Sanders. But so my draft would have started out Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Ja'Tavion Sanders. And comparing that to the Eagles 3, I'm not sure which one I would actually rather have. I just where I make it up is the next pick, because we can get to it in the 4th round. I take Austin Booker, the edge rusher from Kansas, and I would rather have Ja'Tavion Sanders and Austin Booker than Jalix Hunt and Will Shipley.
Okay, fair enough, and we'll look at those as a package deal. I will give you mine, and then we'll look at the next one, and we'll kind of look at which two was better. The 3 that I had going into that day, or into that spot rather, it was Troy Franklin, Josh Sanders, and Tanner Bortolini. And the player who I would have taken there is Troy Franklin. I was consistent with him throughout the process about him being the wide receiver that I really liked. I never thought he would have been there in the 3rd round. And I thought he was a candidate for them to go in the 50-53 spot, right? So if you told me they were going to come out with Cooper DeJean and Troy Franklin and extra, and those extra picks from day 2, I thought I would have thought that would have been an outstanding outcome for the Eagles.
So anyway, as I said, Austin Booker in the 4th round, and that one was pretty easy for me. It's the who are the guys with 3rd round grades that I still have, and then I've also got the work that I did on which positions are good bets in which round. In the 4th round, edge makes sense, so that's part of the reason you go Austin Booker there. Round 5, the 3 5th round picks when the Eagles go Aeneas Smith, Jeremiah Trotter, Trevor Keegan. My first pick is another wide receiver, and that's Malik Washington from Virginia, a player that we talked about throughout the process. A much different player than Aeneas Smith, less explosive, but I think probably a better plug-and-play slot receiver and a guy who I could see really making a role for himself in this offense. When the Eagles take Jeremiah Trotter, I also take Jeremiah Trotter. And then when the Eagles take Trevor Keegan, I take the highest offensive lineman on my board, and that's Christian Mahogany. And that's sort of an example of where I find this process a little bit underwhelming. Is I don't love Christian Mahogany. I'd rather take a guy who I actually feel strongly about, but because he was the highest graded player, I just sort of bit the bullet and went for Mahogany.
Okay. I like Mahogany there. Yeah, I don't think that's a horrible outcome. By the way, I did not give you my 4th round pick. My 4th round pick would have been Braylon Allen. Okay. At that spot.
And I would probably rather have Braylon Allen than Will Shipley. I know that I think Will Shipley offers you more as a complementary piece.
Sure.
But Braylon Allen has more upside as turning into a starting running back, I would say.
So that's the move I would have gone with. Then my 5th round picks would have been Trot Jr. for the first one, and then Muhammad Kamara for the second one.
All right. Well, if you want to continue following along, but add a little spice to it, maybe it's time to suck one back, because our friends at Miller Lite, you know what they're all about. They're all about keeping things consistent over the years, because while a lot has changed, one thing that hasn't is the great taste of Miller Lite. Another thing that hasn't is that it's still less filling. Great flavor, less filling, all that good stuff. It's only 96 calories. What can be better than that? Miller Lite keeps it simple, undebatable quality, great taste, and only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. A light beer that tastes like beer, less filling, and only 96 calories. The original light beer since 1975. Of course, the year that Bo Nix was born. You don't have to choose what's best. Miller Lite has great taste and is less filling. Tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY Birds, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories per 12 ounces. Fewer calories and carbs than premium light beer.
If you want to place a bet on the Sixers game right now, it's a 2-point game.
No, you're ahead of me.
Okay. You should go to the BetParks app. We are brought to you by the BetParks app. Get in the zone with the BetParks Sportsbook app. Money is in the money.
2 points, sorry.
What events are coming up? They hopefully there's a Sixers game on Thursday night. That will be a great event coming up. But if not, you're left with a number of playoff basketball games that are not the Sixers, and then a whole MLB season. In any event, you can win big with all day action. You can win your first $10 bet and earn $125 in sports bonus bets. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet. Download the app and play along with us. Must be 21 or older. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Last week,
I did not give you my
give us your fifth round picks.
Yeah. So Mahogany was the guy I said there. The other player I would have considered is Walter Rouse, who is the tackle that I liked, and
because
he was kind
of his medical background.
No, and because of his long arms and starting experience at Stanford and Oklahoma. I
imagine those long arms come in handy in the surgeon's room, like you can reach over all the way down.
I imagine most importantly is that big brain. That's going to help you out.
Actually, don't you feel like the big hands would be a nuisance as a surgeon? Wouldn't you want small hands?
Well, then I would be more surgeon, precise. Right? Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, you have a knife, right? So, or a scalpel.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, I imagine if you are
big beefy hands,
I don't think they're doing it for the first time. I mean, I imagine you're very good with the knife at that point.
Reminds me of when we were in the hospital for Rachel to deliver Jane. The guy walks in who's gonna do part of the procedure, and he's like this big hulking guy. He's just like wobbling in. He's like, "Hello, oh my gosh, fee fi fo fum over here. Calm down."
Were you worried?
Was I worried?
Yes. Were you like, can you give me a smaller, less? I
mean, I was thinking that. Yeah.
You were thinking that. It's like you're the one who's going to deliver the baby.
Yeah. No, he was not the final deliverer, but he was part of the process.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So I would have gone Mahogany or Rouse. I think when we were doing the show, I kept saying Mahogany. But yeah,
it's a funny thing to just be yelling.
Mahogany. Yep. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get that on the banner next year.
Maybe so.
Sixth round, when the Eagles go Johnny Wilson, Dylan McMahon. I mean, I wanted Dylan McMahon. I ended up taking him with the second one. Before that, the players who were standing out were Eric Watts, the defensive lineman from Connecticut, Mekhi Wingo, the defensive tackle from LSU, Miles Harden and DJ James, the corners. Decided not to go with the corners because I've already got two of those guys. And I like Mekhi Wingo, the best of those. 21 years old. Feels like a guy who you could throw into the defensive line rotation hopper, see if he develops into a player with some upside. And so I go Mekhi Wingo, Dylan McMahon. So, Julia, I think if you have the graphic, you can flash up my full shadow draft against the Eagles here. And you've got, that's what it looks like. Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry. You look at the whole thing, and I kind of do like mine better. But I also, the Cooper DeJean is where I feel like maybe I'm a little bit jealous of the Eagles. I went Kool-Aid, and I'm a little bit envious of Cooper DeJean.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I like yours too. Malik Washington, I saw quotes from Miami this week that Mike McDaniel really wanted Malik Washington. He was like really pushing Greer to take Malik Washington. So certainly something to watch in Miami there. I was with you on Mahogany. I actually like Wingo. That's the direction I would have gone at D tackle. I still would have gone with Johnny Wilson, although I probably would have tried to force an offensive tackle. Like, I don't know much about Travis Glover. I know they brought him in. Other than that, Tylen Grable has great athletic testing. He's also an old offensive tackle. I don't know if I would have drafted a a 25-year-old offensive tackle. I would have felt disappointed about not getting an offensive tackle in the draft. And again, the Eagles did not get an offensive tackle in the draft. I would have considered Jaheim Bell, but ultimately the guys I would have gone with were Wingo and Johnny Wilson.
And I think it probably does hinge on how you feel about Jalix Hunt. Because that's the one where, the Eagles diverted from the consensus board the biggest. And as we talked about yesterday, there are reasons for that. There are reasons to believe in it, but there are also other ways to get projectable pass rushers. So for the audio listeners, just to run it down one more time, my shadow draft: Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Jatavian Sanders, Austin Booker, Malik Washington, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Christian Mahogany, Mekhi Wingo, Dylan McMahon.
If I can ask you, because you mentioned Cooper DeJean after the fact here, you've presumably had a little more time to kind of dig in to some of these Eagles draft picks. Who have you thought more of? Who have you thought the same as? Who have you thought less than after kind of digging into them a little bit more?
Well, our friend Fran Duffy put out a nice piece highlighting some of their stuff. I would say I feel better about Cooper DeJean now than I did pre-draft, and I felt pretty good about him then, and even on the night of the draft. But just the more you do, the more you talk to people, the more you see that like the things that he sees and like the awareness of coverages and stuff like that, it's pretty high level. And I don't even think that like his success hinges on whether he can be successful on the outside or not. I think that would be a nice to have. And I think the Eagles certainly hope that he can eventually replace Darius Slay. Like this will be Darius Slay's last year with the Eagles, most likely. But I think there's reason to be pretty bullish on Cooper DeJean, Jason Sehorn track record aside.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, not the Sehorn thing. I don't know why that has to keep coming up, but all right. Look, I've tried to watch more of Jalix Hunt.
Just hard. There's only so much to watch.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't know what to make of him, right? Like, he's not going up against great offensive tackles. You certainly see the athleticism. You see the tools. Our friend Dane Brugler had his 2025 mock draft out today. Ooh. I think there were 8 edge rushers in the first round in that mock draft. And then there were some like D linemen who you might consider playing on the edge. For instance, Harold Perkins. He's a guy who I think can play on the edge. Harold Perkins is, I don't want to compare him to Micah Parsons, but I'm comparing him to Micah Parsons, right? He's listed as a linebacker, but I think he can play. He can rush the quarterback. That's what he does well. It's all a roundabout way of saying, like, I think the Eagles are going to have opportunities to get edge rushers. Of course, they didn't draft Jalix Hunt to be the top edge rusher on the roster, but that's a pick that I'm still curious about. I've heard a lot. I've listened to Will Shipley stuff, and for instance, I'd listened to our friends Shil Kapadia and Ben Solak, and they were really tough on Will Shipley. And I admit, like, I like Braylon Allen more than Will Shipley. I like what I see from Will Shipley. I think he can be like a solid number 2 running back. And I get you probably have aspirations for more, but and then the other thing I'll say is I saw Jeremiah Trotter a lot. I listed him as my guy in the my guys list. But just digging him into him even more, I think that I was kind of playing against the narrative a little too much. Like I had heard that, one thing the Eagles were thinking about was the pressure that would come on them. And by the way, that has not died down, right? That's kind of been taken up a notch. Everyone's so excited about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and rightfully so. And then I was like, all right, well, the timed speed, you don't have the timed speed, but when I watch him, I feel the same way I felt when I watched him at Clemson on Saturdays. He just makes plays. I watched every Clemson. Well, there was only 2 of them, but the 2 Clemson Syracuse games that he played, and he was awesome in every one of those games. He actually did his first Axeman chop against Syracuse. And so
you busted out at a bigger opponent than that. Come on.
Yeah, seriously. I feel even better about the Jeremiah Trotter Jr. pick. You said on draft day that you thought he had the best chance of playing time this year. And I got to say, I think, among the day 3 guys, that is, And I absolutely think you're right. Like it could be a situation where he just keeps making plays and you're like, they need to play this guy.
Yeah, I'm like ready to get way over the top on Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Like, I think he's gonna be good. And I know that I'm getting sucked in, and I believe me, I know that the likeliest outcome is that he's a special teams player for 3 or 4 years, and gets a couple spot starts, and when he has to start, he's exposed. But like, I don't know. I think there's a chance he's the best linebacker on the team this year.
I mean, it's not a high threshold, but I now the 2 wide receivers. What's your read on them right now?
Like, I want to believe in Johnny Wilson, and I think that he is probably like more comfortable in his body than he's given credit for, and he's just typecast as this tall guy. I think he probably does have a little bit more chops as a route runner than that, but I'm still a little bit skeptical of, like, he did get to the 6th round for a reason. Yeah. Like, that in that skill set in theory is a thing that would be valuable, and he was just sitting there. Quickly on Shipley, like, I feel a little bit better about him after having watched him some more than I did on draft night, but it still is my least favorite pick.
Okay. More so than Hunt.
I think Hunt is a bigger reach, but I think Shipley's my least favorite pick because I can understand the selling point of Hunt. I think there are better running backs who are available than Shipley. Aeneas Smith, like, I want to believe in him too. And, like, 4.51, but he certainly has juice on the field in the SEC against high quality competition, and that's great. I feel like he's the guy who, like, I really need to just see it myself with my eyes to have an opinion on, just the way he moves. I don't know.
And the good thing about wide receivers is that's a position when you're at training camp you can tell. Right.
Yeah.
Like, you can see if they're getting open. You can, so we'll tell pretty quickly about wide receivers. And then the 2 old linemen, you were in on McMahon before.
Love McMahon. All in on McMahon.
Strongly. Okay.
It's gonna be such a repeat of the Jason Kelsey, Julian Vandervelde thing. It's gonna be wild.
Okay. And you're down on Keegan.
I'm not down on him. I'm just underwhelmed. He seems like a guy who can be a backup at both guard positions. Sure. Good.
Yeah, that's kind of what struck me when Howie was like, everyone we drafted, we think we can be a starter.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting line.
Yeah. I kind of look at Keegan as your Sua Opeta replacement. Now, Sua Opeta did start for them, but he's like a solid backup guard from the way I see it. And there's nothing wrong with that. If your 5th round if your 5th round pick can be a solid backup guard for 3 years of his rookie contract, that's a fine outcome.
And last thing, what did you make of? Did you see this report that the Eagles may be playing Becton at guard?
I did not see that. Who reported that?
I think it was a Jeff Mosher.
Wow, interesting. I mean, look, I would at least try it, right? I mean, I would. I trust Stoutland. And as we talked about the other day, the reporting that's come out that, like, Becton picked the Eagles because of Stoutland, that actually would encourage me even more. It shows you. I mean, one thing I heard coming out in New York is that Becton took umbrage to being moved from the left side to the right side, and for Becton to see this and say, I want to play for that O-line coach, that would be encouraging. If the Eagles are looking at guard, why not? Like, you have 30 games of evidence of him at both tackle spots. You know he can play there. If you want to see him this spring play guard, by all means, do it, right? I mean, see what you have there. Yeah. Sean Andrews, Sean Andrews wasn't 6'7", right? But Sean Andrews was a dominant guard for the Eagles and was a bigger type of player. So if you think it could work, and one thing, for the record, that Brandon Thorne said to us was that the Eagles have tried, when they had a smaller center, which they've had for the past decade in Jason Kelce, they've wanted those big guards, those tall big guards next to them, like Brandon Brooks. Brandon Brooks was 6'6", 340, right?
That's a good point.
It's not that much different than Becton. So now Tyler Steen's a bigger guy, but yeah, there's nothing to say that Becton can't play guard or at least see what he can do there.
Good point.
Yeah, he was a good athlete coming out of coming out of Louisville.
All right, Zach, I think we can wrap this bad boy up.
Yeah, we'll be back in a few hours, basically, right?
Back at noon tomorrow. Yep. Talking about some of the undrafted guys, maybe give you a little peek at those. See if we can talk Zach into some nudity and the rest of the shenanigans.
That won't happen.
Well, you won't know unless you tune in. So, for Zach Berman and Julia, thanks everybody for being a little flexible today, working around our changing schedules. We will talk to you tomorrow at noon. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.